Boardroom Bound, Episode 16, Why You Need a Life Plan for Your Board Work with Tommy Breedlove.
There's only so much energy and time you have. Think about how much it would take for you to change or influence that board.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Boardroom Bound. My name is Alexander Lowry, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership in the boardroom. My goal is to give new and aspiring directors the tips, tactics, and strategies necessary to transform your confidence and build a successful career as a board director. Quick reminder that you can get all of today's show notes at podcast.gordon.edu. In today's show, we'll be speaking with Tommy Breedlove. Tommy's purpose is to empower humans to build a legendary life. He guides his clients and audiences to discover a life of significance while building a lasting legacy. The tools he shares show them how to work in their zone of brilliance, obtain financial freedom, and live with meaning and balance. This helps them become the person they've always wanted to be. He now works as a featured keynote speaker, author, and premier business, career, and mindset coach. And that's while doing a professional board role on the side. So he has multiple for-profit boards he's on and multiple non-profit boards that he's on. Before we jump into the show, I'd like to give a quick thank you this week to CG Zen for leaving a 5-star review on iTunes for our show. Thank you so much for writing. Even as an experienced board director, I find value in listening to Alexander's podcast. I enjoy hearing the variety of perspectives and experiences. Well, we appreciate that positive feedback, and we're always looking to hear from our listeners. So if you'd like to leave a rating and review on iTunes, I would so appreciate that. Please be sure to leave your blog or somewhere that I can link to in the show notes. So in today's show, we'll be talking through Tommy's fascinating life story. From starting out very successful in his career, being on the board of a successful, profitable company that he was also a senior executive in, and then hitting rock bottom and how that caused him to change his lifestyle and his approach, reorient himself, rethink his time and his priorities. And along the way, as he's rebuilt himself into a career coach and guide, he's built that branding. He's built that thought leadership. He has become that guy, but he's also got a portfolio of board roles, multiple major nonprofits, and several for-profit board roles as well. Tommy's going to walk us through his mindset for how he chooses where and how to spend that time, how he positions himself for board opportunities. You're not going to want to miss it because in addition to helping you in your board career, it's also going to be some personal takeaways. Tommy also has a wonderful opportunity at the end he's going to share about learning how to make your one-page strategy for your life plan. And he's got a freebie he's going to give to all of us. Let's jump into the show. Tommy Breedlove, delighted to have you on the Boardroom Bound podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Alexander, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and let's get boardroom bound.
Well, for our audience, this is going to be a fun journey because, as I would describe it, you've gone through a career transition, you've pivoted, and you've gone probably in a direction not many of our audience are going to go. But while you've done that, you've done lots of board work before and during that, and probably more in your future as well. So it'll be very interesting to hear. We talk a lot on this show about branding, personal development, thought leadership. You do a lot of that in your day-to-day and how you've built up your personal brand. So I'm sure that will be peppered through in our conversation. And maybe a great place to start would just be giving us some background from where you went from after college, going down to more of your typical business track and how the board stuff sort of began in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So after graduating college at the University of Georgia, go Dogs. For anybody
They've had some good success recently.
We get really close to winning it all, and then it goes south on us. So we also know pain here at the University of Georgia. But graduated from the University of Georgia. I'm proud to say I was the first person in my family to graduate college.
Oh, congrats.
Switched through multiple business degrees to finally land on accounting because none of the other majors were getting jobs during that time. It was during that 95, 96, 97 era. Mm-hmm. And so I come from humble beginnings, so I needed to get a job. And luckily, I overcame a lot from my youth and ended up graduating pretty high level in my class and with an accounting degree, and was hired immediately by Deloitte & Touche at the time, which was one of the largest financial consulting, mergers and acquisitions and accounting firms in the world. And so from there, I spent about the next 20 years in large financial firms, accounting firms, M&A firms. And because of that experience, I ended up becoming a senior partner, equity holder, international practice leader of a very large firm based in the Southeast. And because of my background in M&A, financial consulting, board governance, and doing a lot of financial audits, so I've seen the good, bad, and uglies of a lot of big, small, and mid-sized businesses. And so that's really sexy for people to go and get bored, ask you to be on a board seat.
Right.
Because people really like that. They like lawyers and they like financial people. So, and so that led me to a lot of non-for-profit boards. And it's interesting, Alexander, that I used to do boards because I thought it was going to help my career.
Right.
And that's not the right place to do it from. It was not about the service. It was not about giving back. And so I kind of started the wrong way, but over the past 8 to 10 years, I now sit on 2 corporate boards, where I'm not only an investor, but a partner. And one of the boards, I'm actually the chair of the board, and the other, I'm just a board of director. But I also sit on 3 or 4 other not-for-profit boards that are in my heart space. They're place of service, and it's things that I like to give back on. So I love board work. I'm paid to be a board member, and I'm also a volunteer board member. So it's something that I really, really enjoy. And then only to kind of finish out the front on my practice is I sold my equity and left the large accounting firm where I was a board of director. Actually, I was a board of director of that firm. But I sold my equity and went, and this kind of fell in my lap. A lot of executive men, entrepreneurs, board members, also people who own their own business and managers reached out to me because I went through a major transition and transformation at the age of 37. They reached out to me and said, hey, man, you didn't lose your ambition. You didn't lose your financial drive. You didn't lose the desire to be successful from a business and financial standpoint, but you seem to be a better dude now. Your relationships are great. Your marriage is great. You seem to be living in a positive, abundant type space. And so the public speaking career, the executive business mindset and relationship coaching, as well as all of this other stuff that I do now fell in my lap. And I really believe it's a calling for me. And so I really, really love doing it. And so that's a short summary about me.
And so, Tommy, this is really interesting. So you've gone down a path that most of our audience can imagine. You started out typical career path, great first name on your resume with Deloitte, second company, great opportunities, doing very well, being successful. And you were talking about you were doing boards for the wrong reasons. Now, it probably wasn't at that second company where you're doing really well because you were just part of the board, being part of the management team. I'm guessing
Correct.
The part that you're talking about, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, is probably where you pivoted and you're building your brand, which is something we talk about a lot on the show, because to be seen as someone who should be in a board, you have to have a reputation for something. So maybe we can transition a bit there. So you've gone out on a limb, you've hung up your own shingle, you're doing your professional speaker and motivator, energizer, coaching, all of that great stuff. And was this on the side, you're thinking the boards will help me with my networking? Was that why you went down that path?
It actually was the exact opposite of that. And so I'll tell you, I love the way you did that question because it would make sense to do it that way. And so it's important for the audience to know that at 37 years old, I had not become a board of director of that large financial consulting firm. I was a principal at the firm, but I had the fancy office, the title, the business prestige. I ran the international practice. I was a junior partner, and I had everything. Now, I come from humble beginnings. I had everything that I thought success and these outside things would bring me happiness, fulfillments, and take away all my fears and insecurities.
So you had lots of shiny objects, huh?
And it did the exact opposite. I looked up, my marriage was crumbling. Friends were running out of my life. I was working 90 to 100 hours a week. I wasn't enjoying the success I had. And I was wearing all these masks because as an executive young man, tough guy, cool guy, important guy, couldn't ask for help guy. And it almost cost me my life, career, and marriage at 37. And so I redid my entire life. I went on this we'll call it transformation. Some people call it hitting bottom. It sounds better to say transformation. So I went through this major transformation at 37. And just by switching the way I treated people and from a fear-based, scared mentality to abundance, loving mentality, that's where I was promoted to senior partner, became an equity holder, and was elected to the board of directors of that large firm, a highly paid position at 39. But because I went through so much transition and became the man that I wanted to be, that's when all of these other men started reaching out to me for help, because we don't like to ask for help in our relationships, with our families, in our careers. We need to we need to be the tough guys. And so when I decided to change careers, form the Choose Goodness movement, and become a relationship and mindset coach and do public speaking, I was in the right frame of mind, and I was no longer in that fear-based mentality. And I'll give you the clean version of it. I have a saying now: if it's not an overwhelming heck yes, then it's a no.
Right.
And so I would never now take a board seat that I didn't believe in. I would never serve a client that I didn't think, A, would do the hard work, B, show up for themselves and really want to do the hard work of being a better man. So I'm in a very good position now to where my barometer and my heart and gut and mind are in a place to where I would never accept something just for the quote fame and status, because that mindset almost cost me my life and everything twice. And so it didn't happen subsequent to my transition. It actually happened prior, because everything prior was about the next big deal, the business success, the fame, the prestige, the power, because I thought that would make me happy and fulfilled. But let me be clear, money is super, super important. So anyone says that it's not important, A, is broke, and B, run from them. But it will not, at the end of the day, and I have clients right now I got some clients who make less than $100,000 a year, and I've got 4 or 5 clients that are multi millionaires. And all of them have one thing in common: that the money, i.e. it is important to give you the lifestyle that you want and to do the things you want to do. It will not bring you fulfillment, peace, and happiness in your life. And so that's a really long-winded version of tell you how all that happened.
I like to say that money buys happiness. It just doesn't buy everything else.
Correct.
Or vice versa, however you want to think of it. But so, Tommy, this is fascinating, because on one of our recent episodes, Doug McGray was talking about how his first board role, he got the advice. He goes, if he was thinking about going on a good nonprofit board, a good name to network. And the advice he got was, don't do that. Don't do it just to network. Find an organization that you truly believe in or truly excited about, and the networking will happen as a byproduct, which I think is analogous to what you're saying. Only show up if it's a really good fit for you, and then do that other stuff. Don't go in looking for something to fulfill you or something to put on your resume. Is that about right?
100%. If you don't believe in the cause, and if you're going into something just to serve yourself, it'll just never pay dividends in life or in business. But when you have that giving service mentality and you say, I really believe in this cause, or if it's a for-profit, I really believe in this company. And therefore I believe with my talents, superpowers, my passions, and from a purposeful intent that I can make them better. When I sit on a boardroom, and I chair a lot of non-for-profit boards and I chair 2 for-profit boards right now, I always ask the board members, in every decision we make, I'm not saying does this benefit you as a board member, does this benefit the mission of the organization or the purpose of the for-profit company? And if it is an overwhelming 100% yes in your heart, then you're on the board. Or if you have to make a decision, does it benefit the organization? And sometimes you have to sacrifice your ego and what you think is best for you. And when you do that and you come from a place of love and service and, hey, I'm here to help, the network, the opportunities, the abundance, the money, the prestige, all of that comes back to you tenfold. It's a simple equation that light and like attract like, and dark attract dark. So if you're doing it for the right reasons, good things will always pay dividends for you.
It's interesting. I was at the board meeting. Well, it's a sort of an unofficial subcommittee this morning for the YMCA of the North Shore of Massachusetts. We were talking about the strategy for the next 5 years and how to begin kicking off that process. And it's an organization that does a tremendous amount of good in so many different ways for so many different constituencies. And it's a pleasure for me to give my time with other really smart, dedicated people, knowing that it's actually going to pay off dividends. I could be there just to network, which will happen as a result of that, but that's not my primary reason for it. And it's great that it comes as a result, but I would be there even if it wasn't for the networking. And I think that comes back to what you're talking about. And for a lot of people who are looking for board roles, the bottom line here is you're saying, do good, and then good will come from it.
Always.
Okay.
That's just a lesson in life. And it's an absolute, let me be clear. I made it a long way up the ladder in my career. I mean, I was junior partner at a young age. It wasn't until I shifted my mindset and my heart to come from a place of how can I make my team better, my company better, my family better, my relationships better, and ultimately me better. When I switched my mindset, what's happened to my network, what's happened to me financially, what's happened in my relationships with my wife and my friendships and just overall fulfillment in life, because I come from that place of service and how do I help you be better? It has paid 100x dividends to me in all facets. So you're absolutely right. I got to tell you a real quick funny story though. You said something earlier. So I didn't know if I was going to share this or not, but I feel compelled to share it now anyway. I am a member of a board, and I'm going to figure out how to say this, of a very large university here in the state of Georgia. And it's their entrepreneurial program board, because I've got my hands in a lot of entrepreneurial startups. I own 3 or 4 companies myself, real estate company, consulting company, et cetera. And so they've asked me to be on their board. I am 100% on this board to help make that university better. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the overwhelming arrogance and look at me and showboating and let's spend the first hour of every meeting talking about how important we are. It's the second most dysfunctional and unproductive board I've ever seen in my life, because they're just all wanting to raise their hand and go, me, and look how important I am. And I'm working through very hard just to support the organization. I love the executive director. I absolutely love the executive director. And I love what the university and the entrepreneurial program are doing. It's just if we could get the right board members in there who want to help it to be one of the premier entrepreneurial programs in the country and maybe even the world, we could be so much better without the grandstanding and pompous and look how important I am for the first hour of every 2-hour meeting. It's unbelievable. So I just wanted to share that. So,
well, let's take that from a perspective, because I don't think this is an angle we've taken on the show before. So we have talked a lot about, say, fit. If someone is looking to join a board, in some ways it's like interviewing for a job or dating. It's a two-way fit. Do I fit them as much as they fit me, right? So I want to be on a board. Totally. So you've taken a look at that. You've gone on. You probably assumed it was okay, but sometimes you can't know until you're inside the room and going around the table. Let's take that anonymous situation that you've got where maybe you're thinking, these are people with your specific skills and expertise. These are people I could pour into and grow and develop and change and help this board grow and develop to be the best it can be to help the entire organization. How are you going about doing that? Because it's analogous for other people thinking, I'm going to get on a board. I've got to bring my best self, and hopefully that will help others on the board. How are you going about doing that? What would you recommend, Tommy?
So you've probably heard the analogy, or not the analogy, the famous 3 words. Do you bring time, treasure, or talent to each board that you're on? Time, all of us, time is the limited resource that we all have. So if I was making a decision about whether or not I want to be a board, I really, really believe in this university, and I want it to make it one of the best programs in the country. So that out trumps all the ego around the room. So because my why or my purpose of being on that board is so strong, I can put a force field up and just ignore all the, the parading and I'm the greatest things that go around. But for your audience, it's got to be, so to me, it comes down to your time. Mm-hmm. And are you going to put your time, your effort, and your skills into an organization that either A, is going to benefit from it, and here's a big one, B, will actually use your advice and execute on that advice, and C, do you enjoy being there? Because even if you bring your why is strong and you bring the talent in, if you're surrounded by a bunch of people who don't have the same values, aren't in it for the same reasons you are, and I do believe some people on this university board actually are in the same reason I am. But if you just don't like being there, life is way too short to be on a resume building board, because our days are filled with stuff. And one of the things I teach is reconquering your time and calendar. It's one of my favorite things to teach people.
Because all of us only have 168 hours in a week. That's it.
Correct. And life is short. I mean, we don't know how many spins we get around the sun. So if if you're volunteering your time, energy, or money to make something better, ensure that A, they're going to follow your advice, and B, it's not just an energy vampire for you and you dread being there. So it's super important to not only use your brain skills and your talents and your professional talents, but also your soft skills to know, is this a great fit for me and my happiness and my well-being as well? So that's what advice I would give.
So Tommy, that's great. Let's take that to the next step. So you're one of our audience members and you have worked tirelessly for months, maybe in some cases years, position yourself to what you think is going to be a great board role. You get in it and oops, it's not what I thought it was going to be. How do you go through the process, spending the time, the energy to figure out, I'm going to invest in it to see if I can change it and help it grow and develop it, but eventually if I need to, I'll pull the ripcord and I'll parachute out. How do you make that decision?
You've got to do, this is going to be an answer that I hope that you like, but it's a tough answer. You have to be, and so many people aren't really that self-aware. You have to look at your reasons for being on the board in the first place. And if your reasons are pure and you can honestly look in the mirror and ask yourself, the reason I'm on this board is because I believe in this organization or what it does in society. That's for profit or not for profit. But when you get on that board, you have to ask yourself, and this was something I asked myself when I was thinking about leaving. I was a senior partner and a member of the board of a very large financial organization. And I would have been financially set the rest of my life. The money would have never been an issue for me. But I knew, and this is a good answer for you. I knew that I no longer wanted to do that for a living. I no longer believed in my fellow partners or what they wanted. Their vision and mission of where they wanted to take the firm in the future was very different than mine. And I was one of 6 members, and I knew I would not be able to influence or change that organization to fit in my value systems and my purpose mindset. So I knew when I didn't want to do the work anymore, I knew I could not influence anymore, nor did I want to use all the emotional energy to try to influence, but I also could no longer recruit for that organization or sell that organization. So I used all of those. I couldn't recruit for it anymore. I couldn't go into universities and recruit young people for us. I didn't want to sell the services anymore because I didn't believe in them. I knew I couldn't influence the board anymore, and it's just not something I wanted to do. I just walked away.
Well, that was very clear, right? You ticked a lot of boxes to tell you. It was very, very clear,
but it becomes very, very cloudy when the amount of money at stake was on the table. And we let money drive us. And because I made that courageous choice to walk away, what I thought was a lot of money back then, or what I thought was a lot of prestige or power, a great network back then, it's pales in comparison to when you're coming from a place of enjoyment, love, abundance, and and true belief in what you do, it changes. So that's a long-winded way of saying there's only so much energy and time you have. Think about how much it would take for you to change or influence that board. Is it truly worth it? Would your relationship, your business, or your skills be better by helping influence that board? And if it's not worth that, then you got to cut the cord. It's the same thing in business. You hire slowly and fire fast. If your gut's telling you to walk away, walk away. And so, because your gut's almost always correct.
So that makes sense. And then let's pivot this to examples of how you use that today. So we talked at the beginning about how you have what I'll call a portfolio of board roles today. There are several nonprofits, there are several for-profits. Can you walk us through some of your thinking? It's very clear you're intentional about your time and where you invest. How do you make those decisions today?
To me, I'll start on the for-profit side. Do I believe the company and its products will benefit society within my value space? And so I am an investor, so I put my money in it, and I'm the chair of the board of one organization who's about helping men with connection, about being better men, with action, adventure, accountability to their highest truth. And so I'm in alignment from A to Z on what this, and it's a for-profit, and it's got a lot of members, and we're doing quite well. But because it aligns with me, I put my time and money into it, and I truly enjoy doing it. The other one that is completely in line with my value systems, and I'm just a member of the board of this and an investor. It's in an HR technology space that is literally changing the face of incentives for millennials, Generation Z, and it's all about retaining and innovating and inspiring young people. And so the market space is huge, the need is huge, and I do believe it can positively affect not only the employees, but the companies. So I am super dogmatic of I invest in people first, and then B, the product. And so if I truly believe in the board and what they're doing and the people, I'll invest in it. But let me be clear. I've invested both time and board seats into companies that have been an absolute disaster. For me, for my money, and for my time. And, a lot of that's on me, right? Fool me once, shame on you, that whole saying.
Sure.
For the nonprofit side, I've gone down. I'm actually in the process of taking off hats, and it goes back to, taking control of our time and our energy. I'm in the process of divesting most of my nonprofit board work as those terms come up. I'm not taking it on anymore, and I'm only doing one nonprofit board or charity function a year, but I go all in on it. And so, for example, I'm on an executive committee of a Make-A-Wish project. We'll say project, not the actual. And I'm going all in on that to make this particular event a true success. And I already know what my next not-for-profit, either board and or opportunity is. It's called the Drake House, and it's about helping troubled youth men be better, and so that they can become productive, positive members of society, because I was one of those youths. And so I am super dogmatic about, and maybe this will help your audience too, one no is worth 1,000 yeses, and I learned that from a book called The One Thing. And so being able to say no in life and work for opportunities and recontrolling your time, your energy. So trust your gut, go with where you think you can make a difference, but don't overcommit yourself is really the guidelines that I use.
And I think that's especially relevant for anyone who's taking on a first board role and perhaps doesn't have the experience in the background to recognize the amount of time it might require, getting up to speed, becoming effective and efficient. So better to take on perhaps one and learn it really well. And eventually, just like you've described before, there are lessons learned. You figure out what you want to do, how to spend your time, maybe where it's successful, and then you can grow from there. So clearly you've gone through that learning curve yourself.
Totally. And something that, and this is, unfortunately, this is not statistical, but it's very anecdotal. But this is something I've experienced in almost every single nonprofit board I've been on. And some of these nonprofit boards are huge, and some of them are smaller organizations. There's only about 20% of the people who actually roll up their sleeves and do the work. The rest of them want to, there's always a billion chiefs sitting around the table and not many people ready and willing to do the work. And so be very careful when you, especially on a nonprofit board, when you get on that board, you might find yourself looking around and you're being, chef, CEO, janitor, cleaner, dishwasher, waiter, because a lot of volunteers, when they get on volunteer boards, they just want to do strategy and top level stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of the not-for-profits need execution. They need fundraising. They need help with events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone needs to pitch in equally, but unfortunately, 9 out of 10 times, only 20% of the people are pitching in equally. So that's just something to be prepared for.
And I think that makes great sense. And Tommy, I feel like you've given us so much volume of information for new and aspiring board members today, tips, tactics, and strategies, but also about personal development, about bringing yourself, about using your time and your efforts wisely. And I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit more as we begin to wrap up what it's like for you in your business and the way that you're focused, and for people who are listening that love to follow up with you, how they should go about doing that.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about that. So my specialty is helping great men become legendary men. And that's to be better in the boardroom, to be better in their businesses, to be better with their money, but also to be better in their relationships, their families, and don't compromise their values and overall goals and health on this thing we call success. So I do believe you can have it all in life. I believe you can have fulfillment, peace, and balance and be super successful in business. I've done it. I've lived it. So I love coaching and mentoring executive men to be great men. And so that's a passion project of mine. It's absolutely, I love it. Because of that work, a lot of relationship coaching has fell into my lap. And so I spend a lot of time with couples. My wife and I actually do this together. And we also spend time with some of our clients, adolescent children too. So it's just all about how do we find purpose in life, how do we find balance in life, and how do we find true success in life based on what our highest value system. So I lovingly say I'm in the pain and purpose business. Unfortunately, I spend a lot of time on the pain side, but one of my favorite things to do is helping people find the reason they were put on this earth. And what's really cool is when a 60 or 65 or 70-year-old man or woman comes to me and said, hey, I'm ready to do the next great thing in my life. I love sitting down with them and finding their new why and their purpose. So that's one thing to do. I do a lot of motivational speaking. And I do a lot of board work and I'm an investor in a lot of other stuff. And the best way to reach me is Tommy@TommyBreedlove.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And if you email me, I'll actually send you a copy. It's a one-page document of my legendary life plan. And that's literally how I live my life. And people seem to really dig it. And I also send a blank copy of that so they can fill out their own of how do you live a legendary life based on these criteria. So you use mine as example and build the one of your own. So yeah, I'm in the pain and purpose business and the accountability business. And I absolutely love it. And it fulfills me and lights me up every single day of my life. And it just helps me to be a better person as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, Tommy, I think that's a great way for us to wrap it up here of not only how to be better in the boardroom, better in your life in general. And we will make sure we get that information in the show notes so people can follow up and prepare themselves to be working for their best life and be clear on their goals and how they spend their time. And we're just delighted to have had you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and helping all of us be boardroom bound.
Thank you, Alexander. Be well.
That's it for this episode of Boardroom Bound. I really enjoyed chatting with Tommy Breedlove. I appreciated his honesty, his vulnerability, his transparency about how to choose board seats that fit really well. Taking off your mask, finding the ones where you're going to be successful. You'll work with people successfully around the boardroom table and recognize you only have so much time, 168 hours a week, in fact. Finding ones that'll give to you, give back to the people you're trying to serve as part of that board, and how he fits it in between multiple for-profit and nonprofit boards. Now remember to head over to podcast.gordon.edu where you get links to the resources Tommy talked about. For example, that one-page template. You can see his own life story, but also a blank one you can fill out to create your own goals. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd encourage you to take 30 seconds to leave a review on iTunes. These iTunes reviews are one of the best ways we get out word about this podcast. So thanks for joining me on this episode of the show, and I can't wait to share more stories and strategies from brilliant business minds with you again next week. Remember to keep tuning in to be boardroom bound.